Cold sweat trickled down Beatrice's temples as she balanced a silver tray loaded with wines that cost more than her annual rent. The restaurant Lessons was not just a workplace. It was a court of appearances where any slip meant the street. That night, however, what tightened Beatrice's heart was not the fear of making a mistake, but the image of little Nina at home, coughing under insufficient blankets, waiting for a medicine that a waitress's salary still could not afford. It was in this whirlwind of anxiety that she saw him through the glass. A man sitting on the iron bench outside, under the light rain, wearing a worn coat and staring at the ground with a hunger that was not only for food, but for existence. Inside the climate-controlled dining room, the aroma of truffles and spices was almost insulting in the face of that scene. Hugo, the restaurant manager, a man who measured people's worth by the shine of their shoes, was already heading to the door with a stern expression. "Get that vagrant out of here before the customers feel uncomfortable," he ordered, his voice cutting through the air like a dull blade. Beatrice felt a knot in her throat. She knew that intervening was professional suicide, but the faith she had carried since birth did not allow silence. Before Hugo could open the door, Beatrice stepped ahead. She grabbed her own lunchbox, simple rice and beans that would be her only meal in a 12-hour shift, and went out into the cold. The man on the bench did not lift his gaze immediately. His shoulders were hunched under the weight of a secret Beatrice could not imagine. "Please take it. It's warm," she whispered, extending the plastic container. The man finally looked at her. His eyes were not dull like those of someone who had given up, but sharp, observing every detail of Beatrice's expression. He hesitated for a second, and that was the first mystery that hung in the air. Why would a man in that situation examine the food with such caution before accepting it? What Beatrice did not notice was that, beneath that dirty coat, there was a state-of-the-art audio recording device, capturing every word of that interaction. Hugo's fury did not take long. He flung the door open, ignoring the man on the bench, and focusing all his aggression on Beatrice. "Are you crazy? Using our patio to feed trash? This is a serious breach of conduct," he shouted, drawing the curious looks of wealthy customers through the glass. Beatrice felt humiliation burn her cheeks. "He is a human being, Hugo, and the food is mine, not the restaurant's," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady despite the trembling in her legs. The moment of strong emotion came when Hugo, in an act of pure sadism, snatched the food container from the man's hands and threw it into the sidewalk trash can. "Now you don't have lunch, and he's still hungry. And you're suspended. Get out of here now, before I call security." Beatrice looked at the man on the bench, feeling a deep shame for not having been able to protect him from that cruelty. What she did not know was that that man was Arthur Valente, the billionaire heir to the group that had just bought the restaurant chain. Arthur was there to test whether the excellence sold in the group's marketing extended to the treatment of the most humble, or whether the empire he had inherited was rotting from within. He saw in Beatrice something he did not find in his board meetings, a courage that expected nothing in return. But the conflict was only just beginning, as Arthur realized that Hugo's corruption went far beyond bad temper. He noticed that the manager was charging under-the-table fees from suppliers, something that Beatrice's suspension would now help to cover up. Beatrice walked to the bus stop, her hands empty and her stomach growling, but her mind focused on how she would explain to her daughter that the medicine would have to wait one more day. She felt that the world was an unfair place where the good were punished, but her faith, although tested, still whispered that nothing happens by chance. Meanwhile, Arthur Valente stood up from the bench, brushed the dirt off his coat, and got into a black armored car waiting for him at the corner. He had a look of icy determination. The second mystery arose at that moment. Who was the person Arthur called immediately, saying only, "Prepare the termination and promotion documents. I found the person who will clean this company's name." The stage was set for a transformation that none of those involved could foresee. Beatrice believed she had lost everything. while Hugo believed he had consolidated his power through fear. Neither of them imagined that the beggar in the rain was the architect of their fate. If you're following this story and want to see how justice will be done for Beatriz, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Take the opportunity and tell me here in the comments. Have you ever gone through a situation where you were punished for doing good? And from which city or country are you watching us today? Your story is very important to us. Beatriz's suspension was like a sharp blow to a wound that had already refused to stop bleeding. When she arrived home, the silence of the small apartment on the outskirts was broken only by the sound of Nina's heavy breathing. Beatriz sat at the edge of the bed, watching her daughter's pale face, and felt the weight of a doubt she rarely allowed herself to have. Was it worth being good in a world that devoured the honest? She did not tell the girl that she had been suspended. Instead, she made up that the restaurant would undergo renovations. The third mystery of the plot began to take shape that night. Beatriz found an envelope under her door, with no sender, containing exactly the amount for Nina's medicine. Who, in a neighborhood where everyone struggled to survive, would have noticed her pain and acted with such precision and anonymity? Meanwhile, in the luxurious setting of Lessons, Hugo enjoyed a sense of absolute triumph. For him, removing Beatriz was not just a matter of discipline, but a strategic necessity. With her out of the way, he had a clear path to finalize a shady deal with a new supplier of low-quality meat, pocketing the difference as if they were premium cuts. What Hugo did not realize was that the restaurant's efficiency was collapsing without Beatriz's quiet organization. Dishes were delayed, complaints increased, and the atmosphere among the staff was one of pure terror. Hugo believed that fear was the best management tool, but he was only building a house of cards on top of a fan about to be turned on. Arthur Valente, now in his glass office at the top of a skyscraper, watched the restaurant's security camera footage in real time. He did not just see Hugo's inefficiency, he saw moral decay. The billionaire was in a moment of deep introspection. The disguise of a hungry man had not only been a business tactic, but a promise made to his late father, who had started life as a dishwasher. Arthur felt that, over the years, his family had become disconnected from the foundation that built their fortune. When he saw Hugo humiliating Beatriz, Arthur did not just see an employee being mistreated. He saw a betrayal of his father's legacy. However, he was not yet ready to reveal himself. He needed Hugo to take the final step into the abyss, so that justice would be unquestionable and exemplary. The moment of strong emotion in this segment occurred when Beatriz, desperate to ensure that her suspension would not become a permanent dismissal, decided to return to the restaurant the next day to try to speak with the regional owner, unaware that the global owner was the man from the bench. She was stopped at the service entrance by two security guards who, under Hugo's orders, treated her as if she were an intruder. "You don't work here anymore, Beatriz. Hugo has already sent your file to HR with a recommendation for termination for cause due to insubordination," one of them said, avoiding eye contact with her. Beatriz felt the world spin. Termination for cause meant she would be entitled to nothing, not even unemployment benefits. She was being pushed into total misery for having shown a gesture of humanity. At this point, the first major twist emerges. Hugo, in his arrogance, decided to sue Beatriz for damage to the establishment's image. He wanted to use her as an example to silence any other attempt at rebellion within the team. What he did not know was that, by opening a legal case, he was giving Arthur Valente the perfect pretext for a complete audit of all his personal and professional accounts. Arthur, acting through his lawyers without revealing his identity, took on Beatriz's defense anonymously. The fourth mystery arose here. Beatriz received a call from a renowned law firm saying that her case had been selected for a high-priority pro bono program. She did not understand how fate was moving so quickly, but she felt that a greater force was guiding her steps. The tension escalated when Arthur, still maintaining the disguise of an investment consultant interested in buying more shares in the group, scheduled a surprise visit to the restaurant for the following night. He wanted to see how Hugo would behave in front of someone he considered an equal in power. Hugo, desperate to impress, began demanding that the staff work twice as hard, promising bonuses he had no intention of paying. The atmosphere was charged with electricity. The employees, exhausted and unmotivated, began to whisper about the injustice done to Beatriz, and her name became a symbol of silent resistance within the kitchen. Beatriz, on the other hand, spent the afternoon at church, seeking strength to face what was to come. She did not ask for wealth or revenge. She asked only that Nina's health be restored and that the truth prevail. It was there that she had an unexpected encounter with a former restaurant employee who had been fired by Hugo months earlier. The woman revealed to Beatriz that she had evidence that Hugo was embezzling funds from the foundation for underprivileged children that the restaurant pretended to support. The web of corruption was far deeper than Beatriz had imagined. She now held in her hands the missing piece needed to destroy Hugo's empire of lies, but the risk was immense. If she failed, Hugo would have the power to destroy her forever. The final battle was being prepared, and the restaurant lessons would be the stage for a reckoning the city would never forget. The weight of silence in Beatriz's apartment was almost palpable. While Nina slept, finally stabilized by the medicine that had appeared anonymously, Beatriz leaned over the papers her former co-worker had given her. They were records of inflated invoices and photos of cash deposits that Hugo made weekly. Beatriz felt her heart racing. She had the proof of her tormentor's downfall, but doubt assailed her. Who would believe the word of a suspended waitress against an award-winning manager? The moment of strong emotion in this segment occurred when Beatriz, in a moment of weakness, looked at the crucifix on the wall and cried, not out of sadness, but out of exhaustion. She felt that her goodness had led her into a dead end, where the only way to survive seemed to be to use the same dirty weapons as her enemies. Meanwhile, Arthur Valente was immersed in a parallel reality. He had spent the afternoon in one of the community kitchens his father had founded, personally cooking for hundreds of people. The experience of being the hungry man on the restaurant bench had changed something in his perception of leadership. He realized that the efficiency he demanded from his executives was being translated into cruelty at the bottom of the pyramid. Arthur decided that the confrontation with Hugo would not be just a dismissal. It would be a social experiment. He sent an official invitation to the restaurant, informing them that the great investor would dine there that night. Hugo entered a state of frenzy, demanding that the silverware be polished until it shone and that the menu be executed without a single error. He did not know he was polishing the stage of his own ruin. The fifth mystery of the story arises when Beatriz receives a text message from an unknown number, saying only, "Go to the restaurant today at 8 p.m. Wear the blue dress you saved for special occasions." The truth needs a witness. Beatriz hesitated. That was the dress she had bought for Nina's baptism and had never had the courage to wear again. Who knew about that piece of clothing? And why would someone want her to be at the place where she had been humiliated? Despite the fear, something in her intuition, that gentle voice she called Faith, told her she should go. She put on the dress, fixed her hair with trembling hands, and headed to the city center, feeling as if she were walking into the eye of a hurricane. At Lessons, the tension was absolute. Hugo paced through the dining room, mistreating the waitstaff and obsessively checking every detail. He was so focused on his own rise that he did not notice the arrival of an elegant man, wearing an impeccable tailored suit, whose eyes were strangely familiar. It was Arthur, now in his true form. He sat at the main table, the same one from which one could see the iron bench where he had been under the rain. Hugo approached with a servile smile, bowing as if he were before a king. "It is an honor to receive you, Mr. Valente. I have prepared the best our establishment can offer," Hugo said, not recognizing for even a second the man he had called trash just 48 hours earlier. Arthur accepted the menu with a cold gesture. I hope the food is better than the external hospitality, Mr. Hugo, Arthur remarked, in a velvety voice that sent a chill down the manager's spine. Hugo paled slightly, but attributed the comment to high-level standards. It was at that moment that the restaurant doors opened and Beatriz walked in. She was radiant, despite the paleness of her nervousness. Silence fell over the room. Hugo, upon seeing her, lost his composure. He hurried over to her, grabbing her arm roughly. "What are you doing here? I told you that you were forbidden from setting foot in this place." "Security," he hissed, momentarily forgetting the presence of the great investor. The twist happened when Arthur stood up from the table. His voice echoed through the dining room, firm and cutting. "Let her go, Hugo. She is my guest of honor for dinner." Hugo's shock was so great that he immediately released Beatriz's arm, stepping back as if he had been burned. The entire room froze. The waiters, who had suffered so much under the manager's hands, stopped what they were doing to watch the scene. The sixth mystery was revealed. Arthur was not there just to dine. He had brought with him a team of forensic auditors and plainclothes police officers who occupied the side tables. He looked at Beatriz and gave a slight nod, the same sharp look he had when he was sitting on the bench. Beatriz, catching her breath, walked to Arthur's table. She no longer felt fear. She opened her bag and placed the envelope with the evidence of corruption on the white linen tablecloth. "I came to bring what you forgot to see the last time we were together," she said, addressing Arthur, but looking directly at Hugo. The manager began to tremble visibly. He realized that the insignificant waitress and the beggar were, in fact, the architects of his destruction. The final confrontation was about to begin, and the mask of perfection of Lessence was about to fall, revealing that true nobility was not in the wine served, but in the heart of the one who served it. The air in the restaurant Lessence suddenly became rarefied. Hugo, the man who minutes earlier felt like the owner of the world, now seemed to shrink under Arthur's icy gaze. The revelation that the billionaire investor and the humiliated beggar were the same person was a shock that paralyzed his vocal cords. He looked from Arthur to Beatriz, trying to process how a simple waitress and a man he considered social debris had woven such a tight net around him. "Mr. Valente, I didn't know. There was a misunderstanding that night," Hugo stammered, sweat now soaking the collar of his designer shirt. Arthur did not respond immediately. He picked up the envelope that Beatriz had placed on the table and opened it with deliberate calm, sliding the photos and records of embezzlement across the white linen for everyone present to see. The seventh mystery of the plot revealed itself at that moment. Arthur already possessed copies of those same documents. He did not need Beatriz's evidence to know that Hugo was corrupt, but he needed her to bring them. He wanted to test whether, even after being crushed by the system, Beatriz would have the courage to fight for the truth instead of simply accepting her defeat in silence. The misunderstanding, Hugo, was not your prejudice. That is merely a symptom of your lack of character, Arthur said, his voice projecting effortlessly throughout the room. The real mistake was you believing that the power I gave you made you superior to the human beings who sustain this place with their own sweat. Arthur made a subtle gesture, and the men at the side tables, whom Hugo thought were merely wealthy customers, stood up. They were auditors and federal agents. The moment of strong emotion in this segment happened when Hugo, in one last act of desperation and cowardice, tried to blame his own team. "They are lying. Beatriz blackmailed me. She stole those documents to try to extort me," he shouted, pointing at the other waiters who were watching the scene. That was when the silence of the staff broke. One by one, the cooks, cleaning assistants, and waiters began to approach the central table. They did not speak. They simply handed over their own records, small notebooks where they had written down every humiliation, every unpaid extra hour, and every threat they had endured. Beatriz felt the tears flow freely. She realized that her solitary courage had served as the fuse that ignited the righteous uprising of all her colleagues. The second major twist occurred when Arthur revealed the contents of the recording device he had carried while sitting in the rain. He had not recorded only Beatrice's kindness. He had recorded Hugo's confession about the bribery scheme with suppliers, made minutes before Beatrice went out with the lunchbox. Hugo had not only been cruel, he had been careless in his arrogance, believing that a homeless man was invisible and incapable of understanding his dealings. "You are not just a bad manager, Hugo. You are a criminal," declared the chief auditor, presenting the warrant for immediate arrest for financial fraud and crimes against labor organization. Hugo was handcuffed right there, in the center of the dining room. He had ruled with an iron fist. The image of the manager being taken away through the back, passing through the same service door through which he had tried to expel Beatrice forever, was the perfect execution of poetic justice. The restaurant, once a place of oppression, was filled with a collective sigh of relief. However, the climax still held a surprise. Arthur turned to Beatrice, who still held her trembling hands. "Beatrice, this restaurant needs someone who understands that the most important ingredient of any dish is the dignity of the one who serves it. I'm not giving your job back. I am handing you the keys to this place." The eighth mystery was finally unraveled. The envelope with the money for Nina's medicine, which Beatrice had received anonymously, had not been sent by a neighbor, but by Arthur himself. He had been monitoring her since that night, ensuring that she would not succumb to misery while he prepared the stage for Hugo's downfall. He saw in her the leadership his empire lacked. Beatrice looked at the keys on the table and then at her co-workers. She saw in their eyes not envy, but hope. She accepted the challenge, not for the title of general manager, but for the promise of transforming that environment into a place of respect and faith. The segment ends with the dining room being cleared of onlookers, leaving only the original staff and Arthur. The atmosphere of empty luxury at Lessons was dying, giving way to something new, more organic and human. Beatrice walked to the kitchen, where Nina's food was prepared with the same care she would give to her own daughter. She knew that the battle against Hugo's system had been won, but the true mission of rebuilding was only just beginning. Arthur watched her from a distance, feeling that by saving that woman's career, he had, in fact, rescued the soul of his father's company. Justice had been complete, and the fate of everyone involved now followed a course that no one, except Beatrice's generous heart, could have foreseen. The morning light streaming through the large windows of the now-renamed Lessons de Vie had a different glow. It was no longer the cold reflection of marble, but the warmth of an environment that finally pulsed with real life. The weeks that followed Hugo's downfall were marked by a cleansing that went far beyond cleaning products. Under Beatrice's management, the restaurant became a model of humanity. She did not just change the menu to something more welcoming. She changed the soul of the service. Beatrice's first act as manager was to create a community table where, every day, a percentage of the profit was allocated to high-quality meals for people in vulnerable situations, served with the same elegance dedicated to paying customers. She proved that sophistication and charity can walk together without losing their essence. The moment of strong emotion in this conclusion occurred on the day Nina, finally cured after the surgery fully paid for by the assistance fund that Arthur and Beatrice created, ran into the restaurant. Seeing the girl with rosy cheeks, hugging her mother in the center of the dining room where only fear had once reigned, moved even the most seasoned employees to tears. Beatrice was not just a boss. She was living proof that faith and persistence can move mountains of injustice. Nina became the team's lucky charm, reminding everyone that their work served to sustain dreams, not just to accumulate fortunes. Beatrice maintained her humility, continuing to wear her apron from time to time to help in the kitchen, ensuring she would never forget where she came from. The relationship between Beatrice and Arthur evolved in a way that defied all cliches. There was no rushed marriage proposal based solely on gratitude or power. What emerged was a love built in the quiet of shared values. Arthur, influenced by Beatrice's unshakable character, stopped being a businessman who merely observed from afar and became a present leader. He learned from her that a man's success is not measured by what he owns, but by what he protects. They spent months working side by side, redesigning the entire business group to follow the ethical model Beatrice had implemented. The love between them was mature, built on mutual respect and the admiration of those who survived a storm of lies together. The moral lesson of this journey is a powerful message for the modern world. True authority does not come from a title or a bank account, but from the ability to see others as equals, even under the disguise of need. Beatrice taught Arthur that kindness is not a weakness to be exploited, but the most powerful force that exists to transform reality. Hugo, on the other hand, became a forgotten example of how arrogance and lack of ethics lead to total isolation. The story shows us that the universe has a peculiar way of balancing the scales. Those who plant contempt reap loneliness, but those who plant compassion reap a support network capable of sustaining any fall. The video ends with an emotional scene, a gala night at the restaurant, but this time, the guests of honor are the people from the community whom Beatrice always helped. Arthur stands beside her, not as her savior, but as her partner. They look at the iron bench outside, where it all began, and smile. The bench now had a bronze plaque with a phrase that Arthur's father used to say, "No one is so poor that they cannot give, and no one is so rich that they do not need to receive." The camera pulls away, showing Arthur's mansion and Beatrice's small house, now connected by greater purpose. Justice was done, health was restored, and love found a home where truth is the main course. If this story touched your heart and made you believe that kindness is still worth it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more narratives that inspire and transform. Like this video to help us spread this message of hope, and leave your comment below. Do you believe that good always wins in the end? Also tell us which part of the world you're watching us from. We love knowing how far our stories reach. Remember, a small act of love today can be someone's miracle tomorrow. See you in the next video, where we will continue proving that light always finds a way through the darkness.